linguistic.
That was also deeply shocking to find that really there was not only DNA evidence, but now, as it turns out, there's no linguistic, there's no archaeological evidence, there's essentially nothing to link the old world with the new world.
Not only do the ancestors of Native Americans not come from Israel, but we know where they in fact came from, and that's from the northern part of East Asia.
The people that we can identify today as Native Americans, the people that we can pull DNA from, their genetic markers are more closely related to people from Siberia.
The evidence acceptable to most archaeologists and physical anthropologists, both from dental traits and from mitochondrial DNA, is that the origin of people in North, Central, and South America before the coming of the Europeans in 1492 was North Asia.
This is a very large field of study now, where there are dozens of researchers who've worked in over 6 dozen Native American communities, investigating thousands of individuals. And the genetic data from every single one of those studies is telling us the same thing. That is, that the people came from, the American Indians came from north part of East Asia.
The DNA data indicate the closest affinities of contemporary Native American populations are with populations in East Asia and Central Asia.
The homeland of Native Americans is East Asia.
The genetic evidence shows that the American Indian came from Asia.
If Y chromosomes all come from Asia and mitochondrial genomes all come from Asia, then the only explanation for where all the rest of the chromosomes come from is Asia. That is a very scientifically valid explanation. It's the only explanation. In excess of 150 tribes have been tested now, and these are scattered all over North and Central and South America, even to Greenland. And from that survey, in excess of 5,500 individuals have been involved and been tested. From those 5,500, 99.4% of Native Americans have a mitochondrial DNA lineage that originated in Asia. There can be no question. 99.4%. The other 0.6% have either a European or an African mitochondrial lineage. A very tiny minority of African and European lineages that they do find came after Columbus.
In living Native Americans' DNA, there will inevitably be a few individuals, even in the most remote Native communities, that have had some intermarriage with Europeans or Africans. And that'll show up in their DNA. But that small percentage that's there can be distinguished from the possibility of an Israelite migration to the New World by looking at the dates in which those types of lineages separated from other forms of DNA very similar to them. And so, in other words, you can identify which ones came after 1492.
DNA samples from human remains that predate 1492 are referred to as ancient DNA.
Because of the way that science is being improved, now it's gotten to where you can actually analyze the DNA of skeletons that are, 1,000 years old.
Dr. Dennis O'Rourke of the University of Utah is one of the leading researchers in the field of ancient DNA.
Our work on ancient DNA is fairly straightforward. First, we identify prehistoric populations where skeletal material has been discovered. We take fairly small skeletal samples, usually a fragment of a rib, and it's a simple chemical process to release the nucleic acids, or the DNA, that is contained within that bony matrix. Well, there was clearly a substantial admixture between European colonists and many Native American populations at the time of initial European contact and subsequently All of our ancient samples predate that contact, so there's no evidence of admixture in our ancient samples.
When they test DNA isolated from the remains of Native Americans, they always find Asian lineages amongst those remains.
It was theorized early on that Native Americans must have entered the New World across the narrow strip of water known today as the Bering Strait. This would mean that instead of Israelites traveling more than 8,500 miles of ocean, Asians would have only had to cross a little more than 50 miles to reach the Americas.
And in general, the toolkits that were being used in the New World fit what was coming out of Asia at about the same time.
What is most significant about the genetic research and its applicability to the Book of Mormon is that it validates what we already knew from other scientific disciplines. From biological anthropology more generally, we knew a long time ago that American Indians resembled Asians, and particularly the people from the regions around Mongolia and Siberia, more than they did any other peoples. Archaeologically, we knew that there was similarity between the cultures of Northeast Asia and those of the early Americans, that is, in the types of artifacts they used and left behind. We also knew, based upon linguistic evidence, that American Indians shared a common ancestry with at least some of the Northeast Asians and the Siberians. So we had all of this other evidence from scientific disciplines as diverse as linguistics and archaeology and human biology, all showing us an Asian origin of American Indians. Now the genetic data confirms what we already knew from that other material.
Yes, the genetic data is certainly in agreement with other kinds of biological information as well as archaeology and linguistics in placing the origin, the ultimate geographic origins of the native populations of the Americas in Asia.
There is a comprehensive, widespread consensus among anthropologists today from all subdisciplines of anthropology that the homeland of Native Americans is East Asia.
There is a scientific consensus that the original peoples that came to the Americas came from Asia.
Now, DNA fingerprinting is analogous to fingerprinting leaving your fingerprints. It's a very hard science, really, when it comes down to it. It's being able to really answer very clearly what's happened, and that is that the American Indian is, at least their DNA, comes from Asia. It's an Asian DNA, not an Israelite DNA.
We've got a problem. That Mormon scholars can pretend like this evidence doesn't exist, which I think is dishonest. We can confront it, and we can challenge it. I don't think that we would be successful in challenging the data. In fact, I don't know of any Mormon scientists that are challenging the findings of geneticists. What we have been doing is wrestling with our own conceptions of the Book of Mormon. That is, most Mormon scholars who've commented on the subject, including myself, agree that the American Indians could not possibly be the descendants of the Lamanites. That is, the American Indians as a whole.
We're going to have some more of this film next week. And so if you have comments that you wanted to get in, we'll be back live next week. And you can call, make any comments, questions that you have any Mormon friends, call us as well, have them watch next week if you'd like.